Do you think that never again could ever happen again?
Yes.
What does it mean to be a Holocaust survivor?
I feel it is very incumbent on me to speak as often as I can. We are a diminishing universe. We must not forget. Tiskach. We must not forget. And the essence of talking about the Holocaust is to ensure that it is remembered.
I want to say I'm not surprised, but I am surprised because it's motivated by one thing and one thing only.
Hatred.
Hatred. Hatred of the Jewish people. Are you angry?
The fact that it is happening still is what really, really disturbs me. So if I'm 1 against 1 billion, I'll keep on doing my one thing. These young, beautiful people who were there to enjoy life, to show joy at Nova, they had no idea what was going to happen. How can it continue? How can the world that has gone through so many crises of hatred, there's always been the disdain of Jews. One lie is people will know it's a lie. Repeat it 1,000 times, it becomes the truth. It's become a numbers game. Who can hate more?
It's shameless.
It is.
Do you think we've have this disillusionment of that we're safe in this country?
I'm still grateful that I live in a country that has given me so many opportunities.
Do you feel betrayed?
We're afraid to wear a kippah on the street. We're afraid to wear Magen David. My beloved Queenie has never taken off her Magen David. I wear proudly this little prayer for our hostages.
We see protests happening in the street. We saw the encampment down at University of Toronto that was unchallenged for many months. Sol, I'm going to ask you, should I stay or should I go?
I'm going to be a proud and visible Jew, regardless what the circumstances might be.
Is Islam ideologically supporting anti-Semitism?
The answer is no, but parts of the Quran not only support, but very clearly state that getting rid of the Jews is an obligation of certain Muslim sects. An atomic bomb in the hands of Iran cannot, must not, will not happen. The regime must go.
We have to be unapologetically draconian in our response because it's about our survival. Would you agree to that?
Totally, totally.
We certainly haven't been sheep this time, have we? Sol, could we, the Jewish state, could we do better?
Yes.
How does it make you feel as a Holocaust survivor when you see the Jews divided? What do you want to say to them?
Stop being divided. Somehow find that derech eretz that will bring us together.
Respectfully.
Respectfully.
And I think that's the key here. When we lose respect for one another, that's when we lose that humanity.
Learn to love. That to me is the most important thing in life. Learn to love.
People should not be afraid to have their voices heard. Sol, you have found your voice. You knew you brought forward your voice where others may be afraid or may be shy. But I think it's an important message is that if you have something to say it now, because if you don't say it now, when are you going to say it?
What does hate at the end of the day produce? More hate. If you haven't tried to be nice to someone, then you failed that person and yourself.
My name is Israel Ellis, and this is The Unfiltered View, a companion to the wake-up call. This is where truth breaks through the noise.
Today, we are honored to speak with Sol Nayman, Holocaust survivor, Canadian citizen, and living witness to the darkest chapter in Jewish history. His story is not just a testimony of survival, but a lens through which we can examine the world today. In a time of rising anti-Semitism, political division, and moral confusion, Sol's voice is more important than ever before. I am Israel Ellis, and this is The Unfiltered View. a companion to the wake-up call. Please show your appreciation for this podcast by liking it, sharing it, and commenting on it, and following me on israelellis.com and on Substack. Sol, thank you very much for joining us. I'm honored that you would allow me to interview you in this home, in your beautiful home.
Israel, it is a joy for me and a great pleasure for me to be able to speak to you and to your audience. In fact, this is a medium that I have not been part of before, except when the U.S.C. Shoah Foundation filmed me a couple of years ago. I generally speak directly, primarily to students, but to young people, because they are the last step towards creating witnesses. When our students become parents and have children and blessed with children, their children will not know any Holocaust survivors. We are a diminishing universe, and I think it's very important. I feel it is very incumbent on me to speak as often as I can to as many entities as I can, and wherever they may be, primarily about the Holocaust, its impact on the world, its impact on Jews, and how important it is to ensure that all the enemies of Jews and all the opponents of the Holocaust, all the deniers, are put in their place. So to me, speaking to students, speaking to adults, speaking to Canadians, Americans, Israelis, Jews, non-Jews, is a mission that is a very integral part of my life.
Sol, what does it mean to be a Holocaust survivor?
What it means is to communicate what we know about the Holocaust. I'm sure you are aware that there are thousands and thousands of books that have been written about the Holocaust. Somebody gave me a number like 16,000. Videos, films, etc. But there's nothing like the spoken testimony of survivors. And unfortunately, many survivors have not left a Yerusha, they have not left a heritage of their survival. Because every survivor's story is different, and a different nuance, a different place, a different suffering. What I try to emphasize is the parallel Holocaust, the Holocaust that occurred in the Soviet Union, where we survived for 6.5 years after being deported from Poland. 2.5 million Jews were destroyed in the Soviet Union, 3.5 million in the rest of Europe. And that is something that is not known sufficiently and not talked about sufficiently. So I feel it's important for me to talk about that it was not just Poland centered or Germany centered or Latvia or what. The Soviet Union was one of the most horrible killing places. And the comparison is that the Holocaust in Poland or other parts of Europe was primarily a Holocaust by gas. In the Soviet Union, it was a Holocaust by bullets. There were no gas chambers per se. There were no crematoria, bullets. And the most horrible example is Babi Yar, which is near Kiev, where in the space of 2 days, 33,700 Jewish men, women, and children were lined up naked in front of open pits and were shot in the back of their heads. Some people survived that. How many people know about that? Unfortunately, not too many. So there were so many other places like that where Jews were absolutely indiscriminately murdered, regardless of age, regardless of background, men, women, children.
It's truly inconceivable. I mean, when I hear these numbers, we talk in millions, and it's like I try to grasp that, Saul. I can't. I can't even grasp the idea when you hear about one person who has perished through whatever reasons. Okay, we start to look at that person's life and we start to understand, and we feel, we empathize, our compassion. But when you start to talk about these numbers, it's very difficult to put the name and to put the faces to every person who deserves it. When I went to Eastern Europe, and I made it my point to travel around and to visit almost every concentration camp, I wanted to say Kaddish and I wanted to say Kel Mele Rachamim. One of the most impactful places that was the hardest and most difficult for me were unmarked graves.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel that every life deserves a marker. And to take that away, this mass indiscriminate killing, that is pure evil. We talk about October 7th, and we talk about numbers there. And I think that we've done a great job. Some organizations, especially this Nova exhibit that they're doing, have done a great job putting a name to the victims. Because if you don't put a name to a victim, then in the world's eyes, they lose that weight of being a victim, don't they?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we have 3 names beside those from our family, Queenie's family, my family. So whenever Kilamala Rachamim is recited, whenever we have an opportunity to recite Kilamala Rachamim, we have 3 names that are not part of our family. One is a young man whose name we were given by a Winnipeg organization. Another name was the name of Yonat Shem Tov, whose photo, whose image is at Nova. And when I was there, when I saw that, I said, I have to adopt her as someone for whom I will recite Kilamala Rachamim. And another one, just on the recent ACE journey, each participant was given a name to put in their family. And I think it is so important. I think it is so critical. And you make reference to what compelled you to recite Kilamala Rachamim. I do it at Treblinka. Treblinka was my neighborhood death camp, 20 kilometers from our shtetl.
What a phrase, a neighborhood death camp.
And when I speak to the people with me, I say, and may be facetious, welcome to my neighborhood death camp. And what is there at Treblinka? There isn't a trace of the 870,000 Jews who were murdered.
There's
in
just the stones,
of 18 months.
Right.
There's 17,000 commemorative stones,
right,
and stones of the towns and countries from which the Nazis sent Jews to their death. Stone number A91 is the stone of my shtetl, and I'm there to recite Kilamala Rachamim for my grandmother, who unfortunately left us to go back to our shtetl when it was on fire. And when I was there in 2016, on my first March of the Living, my grandson Maurice was given permission by his father, by my son Gary, to recite Kaddish, because at that age You don't recite Kaddish for a grandparent who was not part of the cycle. So standing at Treblinka with my grandson Moshe, reciting Kaddish and Kilmar Rachamim was just a moment in my life that was absolutely amazing. So we are compelled. We have opportunities, whether it's on Yom Kippur or Pesach or Shavuot or Sukkot, as a family to recite Kilmar Rachamim.
We have an obligation.
We have
a collective obligation. And this is a real key
Al
difference.
tiskach, we must not forget. And the essence of talking about the Holocaust is to ensure that it is remembered, because there are billions, with a B, of people who deny it ever existed.
And that's incredulous. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about this later, but it really, I want to say I'm not surprised, but I am surprised. I'm surprised by the absolute dissonance of the unreasonable people that live amongst us and that make up the mainstream of society today, and that is scary. Denial of a Holocaust, denial of October 7th, denial of the atrocities. This, my opinion, discredits everything anyone stands for when they start to deny these things, because it's motivated by one thing and one thing only:
Hatred.
Hatred of the Jewish people.
One of my favorite examples is a video image that I have of a Proud Boy wearing a very ornate t-shirt that has on it 6MWE. 6 million were not enough. He acknowledges that there were 6 million, yet he denies that it was the Holocaust.
I've got some other things here I want to get to, but I've got to ask you this, Saul. Are you angry? Does it make you angry? Does it make you sad? What kind of emotions are happening to you when you're seeing this and seeing it today?
Unfortunately, I've seen elements of that ever since I could see and understand what was happening. The fact that it is happening still is what really, really disturbs me. The fact that 80 years later, which we just celebrated at Auschwitz-Birkenau, not celebrated, but commemorated, I think is a better term. To think that there are billions more enemies of Judaism, enemies and deniers of the Holocaust, to me is just something that I can't understand. I can't comprehend. I can't absorb that. So if I'm one against a billion, I'll keep on doing my one thing.
Maybe, Saul, it's because we are the lovers of life.
Yes.
Battling the lovers of death.
Yes.
And when you're the lover of life, you're always optimistic about humanity. And maybe it's this darn optimism that keeps on trailing us like a shadow, if you will. And maybe it's a good thing. And maybe that's why we are true humanists. But maybe we just don't want to think of people pragmatically. We just don't want to think of, of the truth of what the lovers of death are capable of doing. And I think that, when you talk about today and what's going on with Iran, and then finally, people are saying finally Israel has strike, it's taken over 2.5 decades for them to come to this point, because throughout that period of time, through our own disillusionment as the lovers of life, we're trying to transfer and project onto our value system on the lovers of death. And that's why in my book, I call it a world gone mad, with capitalizing mad, which is mutually assured destruction, which is a political lever that works diplomatically when you're dealing with reasonable people, when you're dealing, well, not even reasonable, when you're dealing with people who love their children. That is why between Russia and the United States during the arms race, the concept of mad work. But the problem that we're dealing with today, the challenge is there is no diplomatic option to mad, because when someone is a lover of death, when they're in a death cult, you cannot reason with them based on life. And this is where it throws everything off. And we have to be unapologetically draconian in our response because it's about our survival. Would you agree to that?
Totally, totally. We cannot just, as so many during the Holocaust, marched directly to the gas chambers without knowing what was there, without knowing where they were going, without having any sense of what would happen when they arrived at these displacement death camps, so to speak, when they were stripped of their clothes and, like in Treblinka, marched directly from the ramp to what the Nazis called, they called it Himmelstrasse, the heavens road, directly to the gas chambers, 2,000 at a time.
Inconceivable.
10,000, 15,000, 17,000 a day. And the next train didn't know what the previous train went through. And we saw that during 10/7. Nobody knew what was going to happen. Many entities should have known, should have expected, should have been prepared for what actually happened. But these young, beautiful people who were there to enjoy life, to show joy at Nova, they had no idea what was going to happen. They couldn't, in their youth, in their exuberance, and their love for life, they could not have possibly imagined that 1,200 of them would be murdered, that 250 of them would be trapped as hostages. No one was prepared for that, but those who had hints, those who knew it could happen, should have done something about it before 10/7.
We're going to talk about the one question on the tip of everyone's tongue, which is how. How could October 7th, 2023 possibly have happened? How did that take us by surprise? You talk about the numbers of people that walked unknowingly to their deaths into the gas chambers. The term having gone to their deaths like sheep, I've always found that term somewhat offensive.
It is offensive, but even if the term or another phrase were not offensive, it didn't change what happened. Wherever there were these mass murders, I mentioned Ukraine, there were thousands of open pits across Europe. In the Lupochova forest, which we always visit on the March of the Living, 1,400 men, women, and children were shot over a period of 2 days. Near Tarnov, it's called Ganyeladim, there's a spot where 900 children were shot. And a witness saw what was happening and recorded that in something that will live with us forever. And when we're there with adults or 17-year-olds, we just have an emotional breakdown. How could that happen between 1939 and 1945? And how could 10/7 happen? How could children be ripped from their mother's arms and killed and mutilated and burned? How can it continue? How can the world that has gone through so many crises of hatred come up with, on a per capita basis, the most concentrated hatred of all? The Nazis didn't necessarily do what they did through hate. It was their life's mission based on what they were taught by Hitler.
An ideology?
An ideology, exactly. Hamas, I'm not sure if it's ideology. It's just something that is in their blood from age 5 to however long they live. When mothers are so proud that their 5-year-old child can hold a rifle. When I speak about a photo of Sinwar holding his 5-year-old son, and the son is holding a Kalashnikov in his hand.
These are the lovers of death.
Lovers of death. The Nazis were haters of Jews, but not necessarily lovers of death. Many of them, after the atrocities they committed, say, at Babi Yar, they had to get tranquilizers because they were emotionally disturbed of having done what they did.
No excuse, but, one of the questions that come up for me often is not a question, but observation, that it comes down to a license. That the population's moral compass was so degraded, if you will, so desensitized, that they didn't raise their hands. The world's compass was so desensitized to this that they didn't raise a hand. And the fact that people who are lovers of life, this was not a death cult in Nazi Germany, that they could go ahead and take out children, mothers, old people, young people, indiscriminately to murder them in these ways, to have that license. In 1933, Nazi Germany launched a relentless propaganda campaign led by Joseph Goebbels, who is the Minister of Propaganda.
The Minister of Lies.
And this was an orchestrated campaign. It was a comprehensive campaign. The power of that strategy was to dehumanize, was to demonize, was to portray the Jews as subversive, diseased, and dangerous to German society. And this unrelenting assault desensitized. Some would say that this unrelenting assault would desensitize the German people, and what began as slander ended in genocide. The moral framework of German society had been systematically dismantled. Neighbors looked away. Bystanders became bureaucrats in a death machine. Sol, how would you compare the climate of anti-Semitism prior to the Holocaust with what is going on in the world today?
Well, not just prior to the Holocaust, but we can go back several thousand years. There's always been the disdain of Jews, going back to Abraham's days when he said, Ivri Anochi, I'm from the other side. Jews have been on the other side for millennia. Jews have experienced hatred, which subsequently in 1872 or whatever became known as anti-Semitism, because we were not the only Semites. There were many other Semite nations around the world. The hatred of Jews was really crystallized in Germany, initially by Hitler, not just in 1933. He began in 1914 in a letter that he had sent to a soldier, Gemlich. That letter, the original, is in the Los Angeles Holocaust Museum, where he clearly says that eventually we have to get rid of Jews. When he was imprisoned and wrote Mein Kampf, which was the Bible of Jew hatred, he very clearly emphasized that not just Germany, but the world has to be rid of Jews. And as you accurately say, in 1933, when he was running the show and surrounding himself with the Goebbels of that time, to whom one lie is very, very bad. People will know it's a lie. Repeated 1,000 times, it becomes the truth. Now, it's not being repeated 1,000 times. The disdain of Jews, the hatred of Jews, is being repeated millions of times in universities, in schools, in public places, be it London, or be it Paris, or be it Toronto, or be it New York. It's become a numbers game. Who can hate more tomorrow than today?
It's shameless.
It is.
I mean, people have gone from hiding inside, talking about their hatred, to feeling that license to go outside and to just and publicly show their faces. And they have jobs. They coexist in this society. They could be a doctor. They could be lawyers, and they are.
And they are.
And this is what is absolutely scary. Do you think we've been disillusioned? Do you think we've have this disillusionment of that we're safe in this country?
I think I can speak for myself. I've always had a view of optimism. I've always felt that tomorrow can be a better day. When we were a minute away from death during the Second World War, I sort of say facetiously, we had a long-term survival plan. Live through today and hope to see tomorrow, and tomorrow do the same thing. It worked. We survived. Today, the feeling of survival is certainly much diminished. We are afraid. We're afraid to wear a kippah on the street. We're afraid to wear a Magen David. My beloved Queenie has never taken off her Magen David. I wear proudly this little prayer for our hostages. Would I do it in Marseille? Well, first of all, I wouldn't want to be in Marseille. But if I were in Marseille or in Malmo, Switzerland, I wouldn't do that.
How about downtown Toronto?
I still do it. I sort of feel this is my turf. I'm going to be a proud and visible Jew, regardless what the circumstances might be.
And you know, Saul, I feel the same way. However, I will tell my kids, don't rock
the boat.
Right, don't rock the boat. Don't put up there, because we're concerned with our kids' safety. Yeah. My son put an Israeli flag. He has a residence in Kingston. He goes to Queens, but he puts an Israeli flag on his window. And I said, Dean, take it down. Why do you need to poke the bear? He said, Abba, he says, if I take this down, what am I? And I write about it in my book. And I mention him in my book, and I say, my name is Israel.
Yes.
I'm not going to be embarrassed to say my name. I'm not going to be embarrassed to take off my kippah or to take off my Star of David. And I'm certainly not going to be ashamed that my son decided to proudly display the flag of this Jewish state of Israel on his front window. So I'm proud of him in this one respect, that he hasn't listened to me. Okay, he doesn't listen to me a lot of times, but in this respect, I don't have a problem with it.
Well, I totally agree
So-
with what you're saying.
Saul, there's a lot of discomfort in the community.
Yes.
We see protests happening in the street. We saw the encampment down at University of Toronto that was unchallenged for many months. We saw, I went to the corner by 401 there to get on the highway one day, and there was protesters there, and the police came up to me. And they said, "Sir, we don't think it's safe. We think you should go back." I said, "Go back where? To the ghetto? You're sending the Jew back to the ghetto?"
And serving coffee.
And the police are serving Timmy's
to me.
to these guys, Timmy coffee. And so here's my point. My wife and I have been talking about something, and I feel I can't believe I'm having these discussions. You know that band, what were their name? Crash in 1982. Should I stay or should I go now? Right? If I stay, if I go, there'll be trouble, but if I stay, there'll be double. Do you think people here, we should be asking that question? Because I know a lot of my friends and a lot of people are asking that very question. Oh, go to Houston, I'm hearing. Go to Boca Raton. Go to, this place. And is this really happening? Should I stay, Saul? I'm going to ask you, should I stay or should I go?
Well, the question that should be answered or thought through in this moment is, if you decide to go, where are you going to go? Because if you're going from Houston to Florida, it ain't going to make no never mind. If you don't stay, you are enhancing the hatred. France is the third largest community of Jews. Israel, U.S., France. In about a year or so, France will be fourth, Canada will be third, because Jews are leaving Europe, France en masse. We had the privilege of having the chief rabbi of the Commonwealth, Rabbi Mervis, at Shar Shamayim. And I had an opportunity to chat with him. And I asked him, why is it that the Jews of London are leaving in droves? He said, they're not leaving for any other reason but survival. So where is our most likely place to be able to survive? As I've said, from Houston to Florida won't be any different. Are we going to go to Israel and become part of Israel, which has been attacked mercilessly, particularly since 1948? We see what's happening now. When Israel finally determined that an atomic bomb in the hands of Iran cannot, must not, will not happen. And what do we get in return? Rockets and other things that are destroying homes and killing innocent Jews. Now, many Iranians are being eliminated, primarily the followers of the Ayatollah.
But military targets.
Military
not
targets.
civilian targets. Whereas Iran is responding, and this is with all the pan-Arabic Islamic jihadists are going to respond with brutal force. And the difference between brutal force and strategic military action, Israel, and as part of being the lovers of life, at our own peril, we will do everything to spare lives, to keep people safe. It is unbelievable, the the military strategy and execution of what's happened, what Israel has done in the last few years, but specifically with Iran, to take out specifically right into apartments, to have that intelligence, to tag these people, this is a formidable force, and you can't help but be proud of it. And you know, no matter what the world says and what leaders say publicly, they're probably going home and they're saying, thank God for Israel for taking this out. So, do you think that never again could ever happen again?
Yes. Because there are so many other entities that would jump at the opportunity to bring harm to Jews. And we have to, I think, understand that so long as we are dispersed and live in just about every country around the world, just about every city around the world, we will be vulnerable. Is there a solution to that? I certainly don't have an easy answer. I just feel we have to continue to set an example of being good citizens, of being grateful to the country which has housed us. I was one of 40,000 survivors who were finally admitted to Canada between 1946 and 1949. Grateful that we were able to come here.
Are you still grateful?
I'm still grateful that I live in a country that has given me so many opportunities and given my family so many opportunities. And concurrently created so many disappointments in governments, disappointment in school boards, disappointment in unions, etc., etc.
And you've given too. I mean, you've given back. You've employed. Many people have been able to build families because of your business enterprises and what you've put in, what you've created here in Canada. You yourself have given back. Yes, Canada has given to you, but I believe that for every person that Canada has brought in, for every survivor that Canada has brought in, survivors have brought tenfold, more than tenfold back to Canada.
Yes.
So I want to ask you something, Sol. I was going to ask you a little later, but I'm going to get to it right now. Do you feel betrayed?
I feel betrayed because the makeup of Canada from the time we got here in 1948, and we have to remember that at one time the policy with respect to Jews was none is to many. That finally 40,000 found a home. Finally, we were able to contribute to this wonderful country. I also use the parallel of the hundreds of thousands of survivors who emigrated to Palestine, then Israel. What have they done for the world? How many Nobel laureates have come out of the ashes of the Holocaust? How many incredible medical achievements have been created? Here, there, wherever our people found a home and an opportunity to do something for our home, not just paint it over, but make it a home of love, a home of involvement, I think we have done well. Have other entities who have come to this country done likewise? Some yes, most no. And I'm not in a position to criticize the government's positions vis-a-vis certain parties. All we need to see is what's happening south of the border with hundreds of thousands of people who thought they had a home, no longer have one, or won't have one once they're deported. and I'm not going to get into politics, but we have done well. We have done way beyond our means. We have done way beyond what our neighbors have done.
We have given.
We have
I mean,
given.
and I want to include myself in the we, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Even I'm third generation Canadian, but the values that have been instilled in me, and one of the greatest mentors in my life was my wife's grandfather, Elias Rabinovich, who came from Lodz. And like you, he went up towards into Siberia. He ended up, on that route. But to instill what it means to be a Jew, to love your Judaism, to love your culture, and to be here because of the people who came before you. And this has been my mantra. So I can include myself in the we.
And you should, rightly so.
And what we have brought to the table, what we have brought to Canada, to America, to all Western civilization, compared to the people that are being let in, who bring nothing but their hate. And I think that's a shame. And there's a stark warning here, isn't there, Sol, to countries? There's a stark warning. Just look at history. Look at all the countries where the living situation was so difficult, where when the question came up, should I stay or should I go? And they left, and they went wherever they went. What happened to those countries?
Well, many of those countries are now being vetoed by those who came there to do something good, the Jewish immigrants. But each country has done what it felt was the right thing at that time. Unfortunately, most countries have not been repaid by the entities that they have allowed in. And it is absolutely not comparable in any way with what Jews have done.
And I think that many of those countries have depreciated significantly. As Jews leave, there is a correlation economically to their industries, to their professions. And there is no question when the Jews have migrated out, and I think this is the stark warning to world leaders, that you're creating environments where your Jewish communities are leaving, and with that, you're going to have to face the consequences of what is going to happen to your economy. I think that the final solution of Hitler's Nazi war machine was rationalized by ideological beliefs. We talked about that.
Yes.
And I've been having many debates and conversations with various peoples over the roots of Islam being ideologically anti-Semitic. But I have argued that these are radicals, that these are a minority of the Muslim community who believe this way. I've argued that there are more than 2 billion Muslims, nearly 2 billion Muslims in the world, and that the Jewish people are a fraction, and that there has been a cooperative and a good living experience side by side for hundreds of years under various places and various times. I can't personally, and maybe it's that humanist in me, maybe it's that lover of life, maybe it's that naivety that has allowed me to sort of maybe believe that there were no haters left. But I cannot believe that all Muslims want to murder Jews, want to kill Jews. And so the question has come up, is the Quran, is Islam ideologically supporting anti-Semitism?
The answer is no, but parts of the Quran not only support, but very clearly state that getting rid of the Jews is an obligation of certain Muslim sects. It sounds trite to say that we have some very dear Muslim friends here, and we do. And I can name them. Rahil Raza, for example. She is an absolute, totally dedicated supporter of what Islam is supposed to be, not what it has become, whether it's Al-Quds Day or whatever. And she is part of the Council of Muslims and Jews that was founded, I think, about 4 or 5 years ago, whose mission is to integrate Jews, Muslims, non-Jews, non-Muslims into an entity that supports life and opposes hatred. So, whereas the Quran is a holy manifestation of life and goodness, there are parts of it that absolutely outline not only hatred, but how to kill
Do
a
you
Jew.
feel that these parts are open to interpretation, are subjectively interpreted, or do you think that it's a conflict within the Quran itself?
I think it's a conflict because those who are committed to the annihilation of Jews, they're taught that, and as I had said earlier, as early as age 5. When a mother tells a 5-year-old that if you bring harm to a Jew, if you somehow kill a Jew, you're going to be known as a shaheed, as a wonderful person. You'll go to heaven. There are divisions and there are sectors, good and bad, in every entity. I think you would agree that not every Jew is good, not every Jew is bad. It's what one chooses.
It's the radicalization, and I think that we're living in a world where it's not just about Jews what's happening, but it's about Jews, Muslims, and Christians. If Iran was allowed to continue to enrich and to possess nuclear weapons and to use those weapons on a global stage, they have not been quiet about their intention.
Absolutely.
And they are indiscriminate in terms of how they are going to achieve global jihad. And they have absolutely no moral consequence when it comes to their compass about who gets killed in the process. It's the end justifying the means for which they wish to live for. And that means that you've got the world today taking a big breath, and it had to come from Israel. And the world owes a debt of gratitude to Israel for what has just happened right now. One of the concerns in a recent interview I did with Robert Spencer, who is the director of Jihad Watch, and he said, well, you better be careful about what you wish for, because how would it best way when my enemy is gone, what happens to my friend who is my enemy?
Yeah.
And so what came up was, of course, the concern over the stability and the future of the Abraham Accords, that these secular pan-Arab countries got together and agreed and have been agreeing with the reasonable peace with Israel because there is a common enemy, and the common enemy is Iran. And they didn't want Iran. They wanted Israel. What is happening right now? They're like, phew. But what happens the day after? What happens when the Iranian regime falls, which I think it will fall, and I think I think in days we're going to see the vindication of the Persian people, because the Iranian people are not representative, in my opinion, of the Islamic Iranian regime. But when that happens, do you think that the Abraham Accords, that the peace that we have procured with countries like Dubai and the sort of the informal peace with Saudi Arabia and cooperation, do you think once the common enemy is gone, do you think that we are in jeopardy of now losing our peace initiatives that were concentrated before this?
I think our peace initiatives will be enhanced significantly rather than reduced. I think it's been well said, or said often, that Israel and Saudi Arabia were very close to a nuptial agreement, like Bahrain, like the other Abraham Accords. I think the deterrent, to deter that happening is when Iran got their proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah and Houthis, to show their true colors. Because Iran felt that if Israel and Saudi Arabia become partners in creating good things, it would absolutely show the Iranian people that their regime is not for them. The regime isn't for them. It never has been, not since the day of Ayatollah Khomeini coming to power. The Iranian people have been subjugated. They have been made to suffer by the regime which has only one direction, and that's the direction that the Ayatollahs demand and command.
It's the global jihad. The
Jihad.
worldwide caliphate.
The global jihad. Once that is eliminated, and I believe it will happen soon, I know, for example, that the son of the Shah was in Toronto.
Yes.
I don't know if you attended that
Yes.
event. It was quite amazing that on the same day, 58,000 Jews were on the walk for Israel. We had just come back from Poland, so I wasn't able to get there. That same evening, I think there were 900 people who were here to greet the Royal Prince, I think his title is, of Iran. And he's been clearly outspoken. The regime must go. He's not interested in leading or becoming the head of Iran. He's interested in ensuring that there is an appropriate group of people who can create a new regime for the people, by the people, and for the benefit of the people. And I do have some mishabeachs for some Iranians, and I do pray that that will happen, b'me'ara b'yameinu, that it will happen sooner rather than later. It will happen.
Well, let's hope that your prediction of a widened peace, continued peace, happens, that our collective interpretation of what's going on right now and the prediction that the regime will fall very soon. I think I think that's a safe prediction if I were to bet on that. Certainly hope so. And that'll only create a stable region and enhance security and peace for many years to come. It would almost seem as if we certainly haven't been sheep this time, have we?
No, we have not been sheep.
I talk about Iran in my book, and I talk about the ancient Persia. I talk about the relationship of the Jews at one point in time, and even today, the site of the burial site of Mordecai and Esther validates the story of Purim that happened in Persia. And you've read my book.
Yes.
And thank you very much.
I think it's very well written. It covers many aspects of a central subject. How do we survive the jihads? How does the world survive the jihadis? And how long is the world going to be primed as haters of Jews? You've covered a lot of ground there. Power to you. Kol hakavod.
Thank you very much. So in my book, The Wake Up Call, I talk about 7 hypotheses or observations, rather, to answer the single most common question that has come out since October 7th. And it's the one thing people would say, it's the 3 letters, how. How could October 7th, 2023 have possibly happened? The 7th observation that I make in the wake-up call is related to the fact that our enemies were watching as the Jewish people were divided. And I discussed an electoral system in Israel that no longer serves its master, and I advocate for an overhaul of that system to serve the interests of the popular vote. Saul, could we, the Jewish state, could we do better?
Yes. Totally, absolutely. We are a divided nation. We are a divided people. And we have a divided Knesset. There are divisions among Jews that have been divisions for time immemorial. We are divided in terms of support for Israel. We are divided in terms of being part of the IDF. We are divided in terms of how do we encourage those who oppose us and surround us? How can we encourage them to be more like the Muslims who are part of us in Israel, who are citizens of Israel, who can vote in Israel, who can be doctors in Israel, who can be members of the Knesset in Israel? How do we evolve the unknown future of the Palestinians? And again, the term Palestinians is something else. You can write 100 books about it. But how do we encourage the Muslims who are not part of the Israeli citizenship to seek a better life? I think the Abraham Accords registered with many entities that realized there's something to be gained by being a friend of Israel as opposed to being an enemy.
Do you feel this is where we're divided on opinion about this? That there are those who feel that the future of Israel is not without the subjugation of its Muslim population or its Arab population, and then there are those who feel that we have to raise the Arab population so that they too. But I think today they currently have. I mean, Arabs within Israel who are known as Israeli Arabs. I mean, they enjoy all the rights.
2 million.
And they enjoy all the rights of Israeli citizens, as you were saying.
Do they also face abuse? Yes. Just as Jews face abuse from a government. There are entities in the government that I feel are counter to what Judaism, what Zionism should be.
But there is a disunity.
Yes.
And Israel has experienced some of the greatest protests, I mean, internally. And I mean, it's actually a testimony to Israel as a democracy that we could have these, shall we say, disagreements, public displays of disagreements. But at the same time, seeing this over here, watching on the news, watching on major news platforms, having our dirty laundry, so to speak, cleaned in public, this is a little bit uneasy for us that we should be seen in that light. It's okay for America to have that, but it's not okay to have Jewish people. It's a Chilel Hashem,
yes,
if you will. You know, Saul, we were talking earlier, and I said to you that Moses came. When Moses came to stand on the precipice of Israel and to present Israel to the Jews, and could not go in with them. That's a biblical story, but handed the scepter of leadership over to Joshua, who went in to conquer Israel at the time. And especially, by the way, this is probably the story of Israel and the birth of Israel is, so well documented that when I hear people talk about Israel as a colonizer, this is the one thing that makes me laugh the hardest when I hear terminology by people who talk with such emphasis on Israel as a colonizer. Israel has been both archaeologically and documentation-wise, there is no question about the indigenous right of the Israel people, of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. But aside from that, looking internal, Moses said something that if you adhere to the derech eretz, to the words, to the laws of the land, you will be prosperous, you will be blessed. If you don't, you will be cursed. And what is the one essence of derech eretz? Is bein adam lechavero, is love your neighbor as you would love yourself. A very simple tenet. And I think that one of my observations that I made that really breaks my heart when I see that is the Jewish disunity. How does it make you feel as a Holocaust survivor when you see the Jews divided? What do you want to say to them?
Stop being divided. Somehow find that derech eretz that will bring us together. Is it humanly possible? I don't know. I don't know there is ever a case that people in any one entity, in any one country, in any one religion coexisted and cohered. I think every religion has its divisions. Every nation has its divisions. We focus more on Israel simply because we are lovers of Israel, simply because we are Jews. It hurts us to see that. It also encourages us, as you said, that we still have the ability and the right to protest peacefully, to vote out a government, or not re-elect a government if that's what we want to do. And that applies to every country, not just Israel.
But respectfully.
Respectfully.
And I think that's the key here. When we lose respect for one another, that's when we lose that humanity. And
I agree. And again, I am loath to get into, I said loath, sounded like L-O-A-F, L-O-A-T-H. I'm loath to discuss politics. But there are politicians in Israel, as everywhere, who should not be politicians, who should not be members of a government.
And this is the electoral system. I really believe that the proportional electoral system, it worked for a society at the time that was homogeneous at the beginning of 1948. But today, there's very much a heterogeneous society.
Yes.
And I argue in my book, where I posit that we need to change the way that we elect our leaders. We need to get away from proportional representation where we give minority interests the power. And in fact, I mean, as a student of political science of Canada and the U.S., I mean, I actually favor constituency type of politics. It's got its electoral system. It's got its flaws as well. But at the end of the day, I think we have to find a way to represent everybody, and that comes through mutual respect of each other. Sol, if you had a message, advice, a warning. Today, we have the G7 happening. Mm-hmm. We have all the world leaders. I want you to imagine that you got an invitation.
Oh, I'm sitting at the head of the table.
You're sitting right there. They said, where's Sol Nayman? Where is he? Saul, Saul, is he here? Is he here?
here.
He was supposed to come. Saul, you're at the G7. They invite you to stand up and to speak. If you could give the world leaders today some of your advice, observation, your warnings, what would that be?
I think I would surprise you and shock you, but in my mission in life, there are certain steps. The concluding step is learn to love. That to me is the most important thing in life. Learn to love. I say that to students on the march. I say that to adults on the ACE trip. I said it to thousands of students in the US where I've had opportunities to speak. I've said it in synagogues. I've said it in churches. I've said it in everywhere and anywhere that I speak. Learn to love. When we march from Auschwitz to Birkenau, we encourage participants to carry a little placard and write what they wish to record there. Most will record the name of someone who passed away, honoring survivor, etc. Mine is very simple. Learn to love. Learn to love, to me, is the most critical thing in life.
You and I agree on that for sure. I wear a heart. People ask me why I wear this heart.
You didn't put that in your book.
I put in my book, I talk about healing.
Healing,
And
okay.
I talk about the idea of how we can heal.
Okay.
But I do talk about, when I do speak, I speak about the idea, the power of love. And my kids think I'm getting a little wacky as I'm getting older because, I wear these love pins everywhere. And
I have my love pin for 63 years sitting on the sofa there.
so, do you believe that there's a possibility of peace? And what does that look like?
Yes, there is a possibility of peace. I assume you're referring to peace in the Middle East.
I'm talking about, peace in the Middle East.
That's a good beginning.
I'm talking about world peace. So I'm talking about the idea, this utopian idea that we could love. If we all learned to love, and all you need is love.
It sold a lot of copies. All you need is love.
Why aren't we listening?
Is it possible?
Why aren't we listening?
Because we have other influences, whatever they may be. Is there a time for global peace? Not in our lives, if ever. Because there will always be factions who will not want to be part of whatever surrounds them. Wherever. Will there be global peace? Never. Will there be peace in the Middle East? I believe there will be peace in the Middle East soon, but there will still be factions, the roots of ISIS, the roots of Al-Qaeda, the roots of Hamas. The roots of hatred will always be there. There cannot be peace in the current generation. I mean, I'm past the generation to see peace, however long we still live. But if we start with the 5-year-old who's being taught to kill a Jew, if we start at that level, if Islam starts at that age, if Jews start at that age to recognize that there is a better way than whatever way there is, be it in Israel or be it anywhere else, there is a hope and a chance. But until such time, there cannot.
So education.
Education.
Our education system is perhaps profoundly the single most important resource that could give us peace. Because violence isn't an option. And even if you put down another nation or another person and through the means of violence, eventually they will rise up against you.
Yes. Yes.
So the answer, and I talk about this in the wake-up call, that the answer is education. We must legislate education. We must institutionalize our educational system so that it does not propagate hate. And this in herein lies a bit of a problem. And if I were to talk to leaders, I would say there is going to be a gray area of civil liberties here when you impose educational standards. But
Absolutely.
I think that sometimes we have to protect society from itself.
Yes.
You know, there is a site up right now on the internet, and it's called findidfsoldiers.net. My son, who's an IDF soldier, is on that site. Canadian boys and girls who have become lone soldiers are being hunted.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter who I've spoken to in the government and within leadership, no one seems to have the agency or the wherewithal to shut this site down. And I feel that if we don't have the legislative powers to enforce a crime that is being used under the guise of the right to aggregate information under freedom of speech, and we don't have the ability to shut this down, how are we going to enforce the idea of removing from the educational syllabus a curriculum of hate?
Well, I've tried to be involved in meetings, particularly with ministers of education, and I'm gratified that Holocaust education is an integral part of the curriculum starting grade 6, I believe. But it varies with the school boards. We have some horrible bloody school boards in Ontario.
It's terrible. It's
Terrible.
the Toronto.
And I have 2 children in our family who are teachers. My son,
Okay.
my beloved daughter. I don't call her a daughter-in-law, a daughter. And they...
It's stressful, isn't it?
Totally. But we can't give up. One of the joys that I was blessed with was speaking to Iowa rather, through connections who knew me. Would you speak to a school district in Iowa? So of course, I've spoken to school districts in other places. Long story short, the Davenport School District happened to be the district, and I spoke there 2 years ago for the first time. It's been repeated. There were over 1,000 students who listened to me, and there were about 150 questions that were subsequently mailed to me. I was so impressed with their willingness to listen and to comment that I decided to send a letter to the governor of Iowa, Kim Reynolds. And essentially what I said to her, how impressed I was with that particular school board, etc. And perhaps, with due respect, you should consider having Iowa join the 21 other states that have ordained Holocaust education. I finally got a note from her last year after she signed a bill that Iowa would include Holocaust education in their curriculum. One of the students, a 15-year-old girl who lives on a sheep farm near Clinton, Iowa, felt that she should write a book about me. And she did. And she used the title that I very often use in my remarks, If Not Now, When? Matai, because that started my speaking career, so to speak. And she's done wonders, previously never having met a Jew. Another year, I was invited to speak to the same district, a different age group, and I was asked, would I allow including schools for the deaf in my audience? I said, of course I would allow it. Not only would I allow it, I would encourage it, albeit I think there's a better method than schools of the deaf, because we are blessed with a wonderful granddaughter who lost her hearing at the age of 22. She was
19 months.
22 months or whatever. And she was the youngest implantee with a cochlear implant. She just happens to have a degree in architecture, school of brilliant, works for an architecture firm. You would never know that she is deaf, not by her speech was not, and I hate to use this term deaf speech because there is such a thing. 4 schools participated. 1 school in Manitoba, 1 school in Louisiana, and 2 schools in Iowa. And I told them why I felt it my privilege to speak to them. And the response from them was amazing because they had never heard a Holocaust survivor. They knew something about the Holocaust. So I will go everywhere and anywhere where I can impart a message.
Kol hakavod. So
And that's what I live for.
this is
That's
what
what I
this
do.
is what you're doing.
That's what I do.
You know, people should not be afraid to have their voices heard. There's a great deal of trepidation and sort of doubt that I have in writing the wake-up call. I felt like an imposter. Who am I to write a book like this? I'm not a professor. I'm a businessman. But I was affected. I was deeply affected, and I felt a calling. And there's so many wonderful people in our community today who have gone on the fringe and have developed organizations that I'm in touch with. And all of them are regular people out there in our neighborhoods who have found their voice. And I think it's very important to find your voice.
Absolutely.
And Sol, you have found your voice. You knew you brought forward your voice where others may be afraid or may be shy. But I think it's an important message is that if you have something to say it now, because if you don't say it now, when are you going to say it? So we're coming up to the end of our interview. It's been beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. You've said a tremendous amount in terms of prediction, in terms of what you think is going to be and what you think the answer is. And we've talked a lot about various subject matters, certainly not enough about any one of them, because we'd be here. This would be a series if we did. Not a bad idea. If you had a message for the future generations, some advice, some warning, is there something you'd like to share with us today?
I'll go back to what I said earlier. Learn to love.
Learn to love each other, learn to open your mind to love, learn to
Learn to
respect.
Learn to love, and that will extend to your friend, to your family, and to your adversary, and even to your enemy.
Extending love to your adversary. Empathy. Through empathy.
Yeah.
That's important.
Through
It
understanding.
doesn't work to hate.
Through understanding. What does hate at the end of the day produce? More hate. Now, is that sort of a kumbaya kind of a thing? No, I don't think so. That is, I think anyone to whom you may speak who knows me will perhaps agree that I'm a good person. Queenie does. Even Queenie agrees with me.
Even your wife of 63 years agrees with you. 63, I got that right?
And I say facetiously, she's the real survivor in our family for having put up with me for 63 years. If you haven't tried to be nice to someone, then you failed that person and yourself. And
We got to let go of the grievances in order to create room in our souls
yeah.
and create room in our space so we could love. And love doesn't have that boundary. So so again, first of all, thank you, Queenie, who's not on camera, for having me in your home. I very much appreciate it, and I'm humbled, really, Sol. You've been through so much, and you're giving so much. You're giving so much, and that's your purpose. Your purpose is to give, which is, in fact, there is a reward. There is a sense of reward that comes from giving.
Oh, yes. Oh, I think that's what keeps me ticking.
Your voice cuts through the noise, Sol.
That's lovely.
And every day, you and people like you remind the world what happens when hate is left unchecked and when good people stay silent.
That is very, very sad, because there are so many good people who can bring someone else to become a good person, and they're shortchanging themselves and society.
Sol, I am very grateful for your courage, because it inspires me, it inspires my children, it's going to inspire my grandchildren, and God willing, my great-grandchildren. I am grateful for your unwavering commitment to the memory and truth of what was, of what is, and what will be. Because if we don't have the power to tell the truth, then we can't learn from the past.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't predict the future. We can't appreciate where we are. We can't affect the future, and we can't appreciate where we are today. You are a savior of the truth. And in today's world of digital media, where things can be so easily manipulated with AI, that is not an easy task. And I hope that the world learns from you and from people like you. I hope that people will see the footage of this podcast and they'll listen to you, Sol, because you have a story that changes people's lives. And that's an important story. And I thank you for it.
Well, as I said, I feel privileged to have been asked to speak today. And I look forward to seeing the result. And the main reason will be, how can I do better next time? What have I omitted from my comments?
I think that when you've talked about love and you talked about where you're at, I didn't expect that, and I just thought that was just so beautiful.
Thank you.
And it's so simple and so easy. Sol, can I ask you to do something for us on camera?
Sure.
There's a blessing that a father says to his children, and that we say to our people, the Kohanim and the priests say, and it's a profound blessing. And I was wondering if you could bless all of us.
Well, not being a Cohen, I'm not sure I'm allowed to. Yivarechecha Hashem v'yichunecha, Yair Hashem panav elecha
V'yichunecha, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem cha shalom. The essence of this blessing is that Hashem, God, whoever your God is, whatever you consider God to be, that God should watch over us.
Yes.
God should watch over us so we don't destroy each other, so that we live in peace, so that we find our path to love, and that we should walk in the light of God, and that we should do so that if forever, that whatever we've been through and wherever the world is and what we've come to and where we are today, that we should come to a place of peace.
Amen.
Saul, thank you so much. Thank you very much, my friend.
Great pleasure. Great privilege.
I'm Israel Ellis, and this is The Unfiltered View. And please comment. Don't be shy. If you like this podcast, share it with your network. Like it. And register at israelellis.com. This is The Unfiltered View. It's a podcast that supports the book I've written called The Wake Up Call, available on Amazon. And I thank you for tuning in when you had the choice to tune out.
My name is Israel Ellis, and this is The Unfiltered View, a companion to the Wake Up Call. This is where truth breaks through the noise.